Hello, Leila. Great to see
Hello.
you again. Normally, you are traveling a lot, of course, in the world for promotion of your literary work and as a representative of France in the Francophonie. But these last few months, weeks, you have been confiné, you have been locked down like everybody else. How did you, live through these weeks and these months?
Well, for a writer to be confiné, as you said, or to be locked down is something quite usual. I'm used to be alone and to stay in my office to work and to think and of course to write my novels. So it was not really something that strange for me. But I had to deal with my children. I was with my children all the time, and I had to be a teacher for my children. So that's probably the what was hard in this moment was to be the teacher of my own children.
So you learned a lot as well with your children, probably.
Yes, or I tried not to show them that I know nothing about mathematics or this kind of.
Um, we are going to speak about Mathilde, as Megan just told everyone. Just before that, because you published several novels already, who are translated into Dutch as well. Dans le jardin de l'ogre, in the tuin van het beest, translated in Dutch, as I said. And then the Prix Goncourt, of course, Chanson douce, translated in Dutch as De perfecte oppas. And you published several essays, Sexe et mensonge, La vie sexuelle au Maroc, translated as Seks en leugens, gesprekken met islamitische vrouwen. You published a book on your heroine, votre héroïne Simone Weil, et several shorter texts under the title of Le diable est dans les détails, the duivel zit in the détails, short texts which you published first in Le 1 de Eric Fattorino, n'est-ce pas? Now you have published a completely different novel, a novel based on the history of your own family. It's a historical novel, Mathilde, translated by Gertrude Maas and published by Nieuw Amsterdam. Wonderfully published, by the way. Great. The overall title of your book, well, it's going to be a trilogy, actually, is Le Pays des Autres, The Land of the Others. And the first volume in French is called La guerre, la guerre, la guerre. The war, the war, the war. We will be speaking about that maybe later on. So this is a very ambitious project you have. It's a real saga. It's a fresco on various generations. And it made me actually think of Histoire de ma vie of Georges Sand, History of My Life. Because history of my life is what Georges Sand said, if you don't know your own history, you cannot write about anything else. You have to know the history of your parents and your grandparents. Now, in your book, we meet Mathilde, which is a young French woman. She grew up in Strasbourg, and she marries Amine. It's a young Moroccan soldier who was serving in the French army during the war. And they marry. At the end of the war, after the war, she leaves France and she goes to Morocco. And we follow their lives in Morocco. And they're going to live on a very, very small farm, 25 kilometers away from the nearest town. And probably Mathilde is modeled after your grandmother, but correct me if I'm wrong. Why did you feel the urge to write this novel based on your family history?
First of all, I wanted to change a little bit of my style and to change the kind of novel I was going to write, because my first two novels, Dans le jardin de l'ogre and Chanson douce, they took place in Paris. It was stories on a short period of time, just a few months with a few characters, 2 or 3 main characters. So I wanted more. I wanted something bigger. I wanted a big space, and I wanted climate and long years, and I wanted to follow a character from his childhood to his death, probably, because as a reader, that's what I like. When I was a teenager, I was a huge fan of saga, especially Russian saga. So the sagas of Tolstoy, of course, but also Henri Troyat. And I love that even in the South American literature or the American literature. I love the idea of staying for a very long time with a character and see him change or see her change and see her contradiction through her life. So this is much more, I think, a desire of a reader than the desire of a writer. I wanted to write the book I wanted to read.
Yes, but you chose to write the history of your own family. You could have chosen any other subject, of course, if you want
The
to.
story of my family that's inspired by the
Yeah.
marriage of my grandfather and my grandmother, but the majority of the book is fiction. It's my imagination, because I don't know a lot about what my grandfather used to think when he was 20 or 25, and the same for my grandmother. And the truth is, my grandmother, she used to tell me a lot of stories about her childhood, about her youth, and she was a liar. She was a big liar. She was always exaggerating and telling things that wasn't true, but it was for the sense of the anecdote. She had this sense of the anecdote. And my grandfather also. You know, my grandfather, he had a big scar on his belly. And when I was a child, I asked him, where does it come from? And he said to me, it's a tiger. I was attacked by a tiger in Germany in a forest. And for a very, very long time, maybe until I was 16 or 17, I thought that my grandfather was attacked by a tiger in Germany. So they were always lying to us and telling us a lot of stories. So I can't really tell you what is true and what is not true. Is it the story of my family, or is it the story of what my family wanted to be or imagined what they could be? So there is not really a frontier or a boundary between truth and reality and fiction, and that's what I like.
Okay, so it's a mix of stories which were told in your family and your imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. When I read the book, it struck me that in France, Mathilde's family, her parents, accept rather quickly that she's going to marry with a Moroccan young man. And the same goes for the mother of Amine, of your main character. But in Morocco, they are seen as quite a strange couple. Uh, a smaller Moroccan man with a tall, blonde French woman. She's independent. She wants to go out. She wants to go to the cafe, to the restaurant, to the theater. She wants to be a lot more independent than normally women in Morocco at that time, of course, used to be. Mathilde makes really an effort. She learns a new language. She learns to speak Arabic in the kitchen with the servants. She participates in the Ramadan. On the other side, Amin also is quite having a difficult time because his wife belongs to the colonist country, which is not very normal probably in that time. So in a way, you show us how difficult it is as two people from different cultures live together. That's one thing. But in a broader perspective, you also show us how domination works. Mm-hmm. Because everyone in your book, man, woman, is dominated in a certain way. Could you maybe elaborate on this and maybe also speak in this aspect on the title, The Land of the Others, because I think that is linked.
Of course, because every character in my book live in the land of the others. Of course, Mathilde, she decides to leave her own country, to go to a foreign country out of love because she's in love with this man. But when she arrives, she gets conscious of the fact that she lives in the country of others and that she's going to have to learn other rules, other language, other way of life, and that she will have to learn other codes also, especially as a woman, not only as a foreigner, but also as a woman. And she understands also another thing is that she's white, she's French, but she's not as French as the colons or the people who are here and who think that they are dominate and that they are from a superior race than Arab people, because she is married to an Arab. And what was very important for me was to remind my readers of something, is that at that time, being a mixed race couple was something very, very difficult, especially when the woman was white and the man was an Arab or a black person, because people used to consider that a woman who's doing that is betraying her community. She's she's a bad woman, she's dirty. Why would she want to have sex with someone who is considered as a savage? So it was very interesting for me also to imagine how people look at her. So she feels in the land of others in every field of her life. And of course, for Amine, I mean, he was a soldier during World War II, and he was quite a hero, and then he was a prisoner. And he decided to fight for a land that is not his land, and for a war that is not really his war, and for values that are not really his values, but he does it anyway. And when he comes back to his own countries, he gets conscious of the fact that it's not his country. He is Moroccan, but it's the country of others, because he's going to get orders from people who are French and who are from the colonial administration, and people treat him with despise, and they le tutoie. I don't know how I can translate that in English, and they call him Mohammed, because at that time, when you were a man and you were Moroccan, everyone would call you Mohammed, even of course if it was not your name. So the domination is everywhere, and especially for women. Women, they are colonized in two ways: colonized by the power of the French colonization, but also by the men and the law of the men.
Yeah, in a way you show us a clash of cultures, which is difficult for both sides. Amine, for instance, he is a very ambitious man also, because he wants to try to cultivate new sorts of vegetables and new sorts of fruits. But that is a very difficult life for him as well, even if he's very motivated and he wants to make a success out of it. There is a reference to biblical years. There is drought, there is grasshoppers, but he also wants to cultivate something new, new fruits, and he mixes, for instance, this lemon with an orange. And this is a disaster, because it doesn't taste good at all. It's quite a symbolic thing. It's quite a metaphor if you want to read it like that, I think. And it makes me think of the motto of your book, the motto by Édouard Glissant, la damnation de ce mot métissage, inscrivons-la en énorme sur la page. The damnation of the word métissage, I don't know how to translate that, crossbreeding?
Raised or something like that.
Yeah, let's put it in big letters on the page. It makes one think that maybe métissage is bound to fail.
The problem is the word itself, the word métissage. You don't speak of métissage if the couple is composed by two white persons. The truth is that you speak of métissage when the couple doesn't have, when each person in the couple doesn't have the same color. So you consider in a certain way that there is a kind of hierarchy in this couple, that there is something that is wrong or not natural. Yeah. Because why do you need to give a name to this couple and to the children of this couple if it was just natural, normal? You don't look at the color of people. It's just a couple like another couple, like man and woman and two men or two women. You don't really care. But if we use this word métissage, it's because we always give a certain value to that. We value métissage. Some people say it's a good thing. It's so beautiful. People who are from mixed race couple, they are more beautiful, and it's so rich and so great. And other people will say, no, it's a very bad thing. And if we mix too much, we are going to lose our civilization, our tradition. So either way, there is a certain, there is a value, there is a judgment over this idea of métissage, but I think it's not good or bad to be white or black. It's just a fact. We shouldn't give, a value to that. It's just a fact.
But it seems to be a failure in the motto. If we read Édouard Glissant's motto, we think, oh, it's not going to work, isn't it?
No, what I tried to say is that what is difficult when you come from two cultures is that your identity always depends on others. It's always the other people who are going to tell you who you are. And I always use the example of Barack Obama. For example, Barack Obama is always qualified as the first Black president of the United States. Barack Obama is a métis. He's from a mixed couple. His mother was white, and he was raised by his mother, by his grandparents who were white, and he saw his father 3 times in his life. But people look at him as a black man, so he is a black man.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, I am Moroccan and I'm in Morocco, and people will look at me as a French person, and in this way they will reject me. And this is very violent because they don't want to look at my Moroccan identity. So what is difficult when you come from 2 cultures is that your identity always depends on the others.
Yeah. Of course, there is a political side to the book as well, because in the 50s, Morocco is a French colony, protectorate. And Amine and Mathilde are not from the beginning very conscious of the political situation of the world in which they live. They are very busy living, just surviving. And they do not read very much the newspapers, for instance. The political situation comes later on in their life, that they become conscious of what is happening in Morocco and in France. To what extent their life is formed and decided by the greater history with a big H?
That was the question I asked myself when I began the book. I was going to write for the first time a novel that was a historical novel, and I wanted to know what place I was going to give to that, to the big history with a big H.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I didn't want to give it too big place, because what matters to me is the individuals, my characters, what they think, what they feel. And I also think that it's not because you deal with a country like Morocco and with this period of time that you have to write a political book. It is important to say that you can write a book about Morocco that deals only with love and feelings and children and maternity and universal feelings. But what I wanted also was to describe my characters without my own point of view. What I mean is that I tried not to use what I know today as a young woman who knows about colonization. I didn't want to use my own knowledge of this time. I wanted really to write like my characters was living at that time. When you live in the present, you don't really understand the situation you are in. Everything is gray, is ambiguous, everything is troubled. I think that in 20 years or 30 years, we will understand much better the Trump presidency or the COVID crisis than today. Today, we don't know. We are afraid and we just try to live our present. So I really wanted to describe my characters like that. They don't really know. They just try to live like we are trying to live right now.
Yeah, yeah. You have many secondary characters in your book. We cannot speak about them all because we would need 3 days, but it's very, very interesting. But let's speak about Omar. It's the brother of Amine, and he really hates Amine. He hates France. He hates Amine. He's very rebellious. He's very nationalistic. He sees how the Moroccans are being humiliated, and he sees the discrimination, and he calls for revolution. He calls for rebellion against the French, against the colonists. He is very active in the movement for the independence. He is a destroyer. Somewhere you say that he's a destroyer. You make him very unsympathetic. Why do you make him so unsympathetic? Whereas most of your characters...
Oh, I don't find him unsympathetic. I like him. I love him very much. Actually, but of course it's normal. He's my baby, so
Yeah.
I love him. But what was interesting for me is that he belongs to the first generation of Moroccan who decided to fight against the colonialism. So he belongs to this generation of nationalists. It's the beginning of the idea of independence for Morocco. So there is a sort of exaltation. So I love that. But in Morocco, the war, it was not a war, but the fight for independence, of course, was not as violent as in Algeria. And the truth is that even the nationalists, they didn't want the Morocco to go to a war, or they didn't want to be too violent. So the kind of character like Omar, the people used to be afraid of this kind of person who wants violence too much and revenge too much, and who can go very, very far when it comes to fighting for independence. So what I wanted really is to build a character who was a kind of extremist, someone who has no limits. And also, as you said, I think that the root of his commitment in politics comes from the fact that he hates his brother. The beginning of everything is that he hates his brother, and because his brother is a soldier for France, he hates France, and because his brother marries a French woman and speaks French and in a certain way likes the French culture, he decides to fight against France because of this jealousy and this hatred for the big brother.
Yeah, I understand. It's really you can feel when reading your book that you love each and other character in your book. I mean, really, you change perspectives. Sometimes we are in the head of Amine, sometimes we look through the eyes of Mathilde, but there is also Selma, and there are lots of others as well. You have really made an effort to be under their skin. You are understanding all positions in your book, and that's why the whole panorama is so interesting. It made me wonder, is there not any mystery left which you could not solve?
Of course, I don't solve.
Do you understand everything?
I just try to put a light on the mystery. I don't try to solve it. I just try to recognize it. What is difficult is that when you, in the day-to-day life, you live with people and you have friends and family, and you tend to forget that people are mysterious and that everyone has secrets and that everyone has a mystery. Even someone who's very normal, very trivial, someone that you meet every day and that is sometimes even boring, even this person has secrets and mystery. And what is important, I think, in the job of a writer is to never forget that even boring people, even very, dumb people, they have mysteries and secrets.
Yeah. Did you answer all the questions that you had yourself after? Did you think, well, I really need to solve this mystery as well? I mean, there's something left. I can't get a hold of it. Is there something which you say, well, I didn't succeed in that person or that character? And I don't.
But I won't tell you. I will never tell you. I know it. No, because I'm going to write now the second part and the third part. So I have the ambition to maybe solve the mystery in this and the future books.
Yeah. Of course, we'll have to be patient a little bit.
Exactly.
Now, your book is very well written, and it is very different from the first ones. Your style is that of a roman fleuve. It's like a river which is flowing. It's the big gesture. There are no short sentences. It's a big fresco with many, many anecdotes. And now I know you like the work of Amine Malouf and Naguib Mahfouz. I think the title of your first volume here, La Guerre, La Guerre, La Guerre, is taken from a very famous book of Margaret Mitchell. Am I wrong?
No, absolutely. It's the first scene of Gone with the Wind, with Vivian Leigh saying, war, 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 fiddle-bidoo. And so I love this scene, and I was very impressed as a child and then as a teenager when I watched this film. And what I like in this scene is this stupid idea that women understand nothing about war. Women understand nothing about the big problems of the world, because the big problems of the world are problems of men. And women have nothing to do with wars. What I wanted to show in this book is that women are facing wars all the time, and they are making wars all the time, not only outside the big wars, the wars of the men, but even in their own home, in their own bedroom. The war is everywhere in the life of a woman. That's why I chose this title.
Yeah. There is also a moral element, I think, in your novel, especially towards the end. There's a quite interesting character, the sister of Mathilde. She's called Irène, and she stays at home in the Alsace. And after the death of the father of Mathilde and Irene, Mathilde goes home. And she has been lying about her life. She's been, in the beginning, she has said, oh, I'm living this great adventure, and well, too bad you are not here, because this is really formidable, which I'm living. But then when Mathilde tells her sister that her life has been difficult, like, well, most people's lives, she is very harsh, and she says to Mathilde, il faut assumer ses choix. Life is difficult for everybody. You have to accept the consequences of your choices. Is this some kind of an advice to everybody? Is this an answer to how should we live, or what is it?
Oh no, it was more the fact that I think in the 50s, when you were a woman and you get married and you have children, you don't have the possibility as we have today to say, okay, it's not working. I'm living and we are going to find a way and we are going to divorce and I will have the children 1 week and you will have no, it was impossible.
Okay.
At that time, if you go to your sister and you say, I'm leaving my children and my husband, everyone will say to you, no, you don't do that. You decided to marry and now you have to accept it and you have to be strong. So I think that was terrible because women, once they made a choice, they were trapped. It was, it was like, sometimes it was like a prison because you were not in love anymore. You were miserable, but you had to stay because it was what the society was expecting from you.
Yeah, yeah. My final question before we go to the Q&A, because time flies, and it's actually not a question about your book, but it's a question on a subject which is a bit bigger than your book, but you give an answer in your book, I think. It is about how we should deal with our difficult history in general, not only France, but same goes for the Netherlands. Everybody who has had this difficult and not very positive past. At the moment, we have a lot of demonstrations everywhere in the US, of course, since the death of George Floyd. And we have many marches against racism and against slavery, how to remember that. There is the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, a lot of statues have been demolished lately. What do you think of this kind of iconoclasm?
Oh, I'm against, in general, I'm against demolition, and I'm against the fact that the crowd is going to decide what should be demolished or not. And I don't believe in demolition, but I believe in the fact that we should put this statue in a museum with a big explanation, and little children should understand why one day we had this statue in the street and why one day this man was a hero and why now we understand that this man should not anymore be there. It's like, Gone with the Wind, or this very famous flyer that we used to have in France. It was a publicity for a chocolate called Yabon Banania. It was a caricature of a black man. He looked like idiotic on this picture. I don't think that we should erase that, because if you erase that, how are you going to explain to people and to children what it was? Because it was that colonialism. It was despise, it was caricature, it was totally absence of respect. If we erase everything, of course it's going to be dangerous, because other people are going to say, no, it didn't exist. What do you say? It was so hard. And I believe in the power of stories, and I believe that today maybe what is going to save us is novels, movies, and stories about what happened at that time, stories about those individuals. So I think that we should listen more and more to different point of views, to the fact that this story should not only be written and told by people from the Western world, but we should do whatever it takes for people from Morocco, from Algeria, Tunisia, from Dakar, from everywhere in the world to tell their own story and to write novels and make movies. That's what is important today, I think.
Thank you very much. I'm going to look at the questions. Who chooses to change the title when a book is published in another language? Kevin asks. Is that something?
It's my publisher. It's my publisher, and it happened to me many times, even with my book Dans le Jardin de l'Orgue or with my book Chanson douce. It has different titles in different countries. But the publishers, they know very much their market, they know their public. So I trust them. I think that if they tell me that it's difficult to translate my title in a good way and in a very relevant way in their language, I trust them.
Yeah. Miriam Carnus is writing to you. Looking forward to read the new book. Since we are on the topic, you speak a lot of the books and writers that inspire you. I was wondering if there are any Arabic writers or books that you particularly like or that have inspired you along the way.
Of course, there is the trilogy of Naguib Mahfouz. And when Naguib Mahfouz is the only Nobel Prize of Literature that is Arabic. And when I wrote this novel, Le Pays des Autres, I read and reread again Naguib Mahfouz. He is an extraordinary writer. He has this sense of tales, of narration, and he has a beautiful style. So I would recommend the trilogy of Naguib Mahfouz to everyone.
Okay, wonderful. I like him very, very much. He's great novelist. Kevin has another question. Will you be in Paris? Because he bought your book and he would like you to sign it.
Okay, yeah, we'll be in Paris and also moving a little bit in Provence. Tomorrow I'm going to Strasbourg, but I think that he can go on the website of Gallimard and he will check where I am and what I'm doing. And I think that I have a signature on this Thursday, in the Librairie Lamartine in the 16e arrondissement.
Okay, well, he will be happy to hear that. I have a question here as well from YouTube. Mathilde is a serious novel, but it also has humor and funny scenes. Which part did you think was the funniest?
Oh, I like the moment when Mathilde and her child Aisha, they arrive to school and they open the door of the car and they see all the little girls of the school screaming and very afraid, and they don't understand why. It's because there's a snake in the car because they live in a farm and the snake is like growing out of the car. So I love this scene. Because it was happening all the time with my grandparents. This part is true. There were a lot of snakes in the farm of my grandparents. So it's a real souvenir of my own childhood.
Yeah. There is another question from YouTube. It's about Aisha. She is the daughter of Amine and Mathilde. How do you expect Aisha will develop?
You will see in the second part. Yeah, she's going, I hope, to surprise you. She's going to be a very, very strong and very particular woman. Very particular.
Again, we have to be patient. Okay. Then the final question, because I understood that you have to leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are going to have an award, I was told.
Yeah.
Is it a secret?
Yes, it's still a secret.
What a pity. Otherwise, we would have had the premiere.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have the right.
Well, the final question then before you hurry away. Have you written a lot during lockdown? Can we expect a special book that was written during this time?
No, but I wrote a cartoon, roman graphique. Yeah, about a woman that I admire a lot. And I wrote a TV show about migration and the crisis of the migrants. And during this crisis, we didn't talk a lot about this tragedy of migrants, but a lot of people died in the sea, even during the crisis, trying to reach Europe. So I'm trying to write a TV show about that. It's not very easy to sell this kind of stories because it's not as glamorous as you can imagine, but it's, I think, one of the most important topics of our times.
Well, unfortunately, we have to let you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
And hope to see you again.
Yeah, and to see you really, not only through a computer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.